Hello and welcome to the Digital Orphanage. In part 2 of this Dragon 32 series, I refurbished the museum's display machine, and using a simple logic probe, diagnosed a blank screen to be caused by a broken timing crystal. With the crystal replaced, it worked perfectly, although I wasn't too impressed with the games I tried. With a thorough clean though, it looked great back on display in the museum. However, that still left me with a mountain of dragons to work on. So in this episode, I'll show you my progress. At least they all have clean and working power supplies, which were finished in part 1. 80 Sumpy loved part 2, although thought I should try some better games from the time, like Chuckie Egg or The King. And Roberto Carlos Fernandez Gerhardt, a YouTube handle almost as long as this episode, suggested I try some more modern creations. Kin74's request was more to the point though. More dragon, please! So not wanting to let my audience down, I'll try my best to meet your expectations. And what better place to start than with Chuckie Egg, initially released by A&F Software in 1983 for the ZX Spectrum, BBC Micro and Dragon, with the Dragon version being developed by A&F employee Mike Webb. I loved playing this game during lunch hours on school BBC Micros, and later on my own CPC 464. A couple of years ago I managed to reach level 22 on the B version, so I know this game well. Where possible, I've captured game footage from a real Dragon 32. Unlike other versions I've played, each level on the Dragon starts with a pleasing scroll effect. And the bright green background, although common on Dragon games, at least suits the farmyard theme here. The sound is functional and as good as other 8-bit versions, and the jump physics have a similar, real feel as the Beeb version. In fact, for the most part, it plays just like the Beeb version, even allowing the pleasing running jumps onto ladders. The standout feature though is the multicoloured protagonist, not the mono yellow colour seen on many of the other versions. In the game you play as Henhouse Harry, tasked with collecting 12 eggs before a countdown timer hits 0. Collecting piles of seed on the way halts the timer for a short while. That is if the hens patrolling the level don't eat them first. These are vicious birds though, as the merest touch results in a lost life. As does falling down a hole at the bottom of the level, being hunted down by a rampaging duck, or forgetting to jump off a lift as it reaches the top of the level. Farming eggs is a tough job. Finishing level 8 repeats the same levels again, but this time with the caged duck freed and hunting you down. The duck sprite is a little smaller than the Beeb version and looks more like a swan than a duck. But it serves the same purpose of applying a constant menace that penalises any stops to wait for a lift. Completing level 16 repeats the same levels yet again, and this time you've got both the duck and hen menace to deal with. One thing I did notice was I died a lot more on the Dragon version, despite appearing to be an almost identical game. Well, let's look at 3 reasons why that was. Firstly, the collision detection on the eggs and seeds are not as good. On the Dragon version you have to touch the very right hand of an object to register a hit, meaning a sneaky dash from the left is not as easy to pull off. Next are the lifts. On the Beeb version they go right to the top, with the word level acting as a handy guide as to when they'll reappear at the bottom. On the Dragon version though, they end in mid-air, which isn't as easy to judge at first. And lastly, even a caged duck is deadly on the Dragon version. Chuckie Egg on the Dragon. One of the better versions and is fun to play, just not quite as good as the Beeb and CPC versions. Let's take a break from games and see what progress I've made with these dragons. This is the dragon I stole the crystal from to repair the display dragon. I ordered 2 replacements just to be sure, from Caterpillar Games. And here is the funky packaging I was telling you about in the last episode. The dragon's in good shape and only needs light cleaning, As before, I clean it with warm soapy water, being careful not to damage the labels. Nothing more abrasive than a toothbrush. To save stripping the keyboard down completely, I use a plastic tool and a little bit of flossing. All parts are clean again, and the label, with its OEM creases, is still attached. After all that scrubbing, let's take a break and look at another game from 1983. There's no surprise for guessing that Donkey King from Microdeal is a Donkey Kong clone. This game originally appears to have been created for the Tandy Color computer in 1982. Presumably this was a straightforward port to the Dragon 32 due to the almost identical hardware. However, Microdeal were challenged by the copyright holder and forced to change its name. Their solution was to rename it The King. So let's take a look at Donkey King, The King. This game gives you 3 different colour schemes to choose from. Pick wisely though, as you need to reload to choose another. The black scheme allows for detailed characters using the dragon's high-res mode. Unfortunately, this creates cross-colour artifacts on a PAL display, causing a shimmering rainbow effect. However, this appears to have been done on purpose, likely from the Tandy version, to create another colour palette on an NTSC display. The XRAW emulator has a cross-colour mode to emulate how this would display, and it looks much closer to the Donkey Kong original. The action is fast and faithful, and the sound effects above average for a Dragon title. Buff mode is by far the worst mode to play the game in, being an eye strain inducing mess of colours. Not surprisingly, the green palette is the best mode to play the game on a PAL Dragon. At normal speed the game is very hard to play, and for this quick demo I'm grateful for the included slow mode. So that was Donkey King, The King. Please don't sue me. Maybe I should get back to repairing dragons. Fitting the new crystal is a simple task, especially as the old one has already been removed. A quick tidy of the board, some semi-accurate bending of wires, and some white tack to hold the crystal in place during soldering. Then a light dusting and it's ready to go back in the case. The power board gets the same treatment along with a check to ensure it's outputting the correct voltages. So what else is there to show what these dragons are capable of? Well, in recent years, homebrew developers have really pushed the envelope of what old hardware is capable of, and in the case of the Dragon, Return of the Beast by S. Orchard is a great example, featuring the best music I've ever heard from a Dragon. It's labelled as a demo, but seems more like an unfinished game. The top-down multi-way scrolling is smooth, and the enemies, that you must either destroy or avoid, are good size and flicker free. And that's it, apart from a few developer options, like warping to an identical level in a different colour scheme. Or the ability to swap between the 3 colour schemes directly. The source code is available on GitHub though, if you want to learn how this technical wizardry was achieved. Well, let's reassemble this dragon and see if we've got another one ready. As I've mentioned before, the modular nature of the dragon makes it a joy to work on. I apply the same tuning and battery of tests as I did the dragon in part 2, ensuring the keyboard, joysticks, etc. all work. On one occasion I got a strange glitch on Fearless Freddy, but flipping the tape over and loading from side B solved that problem. Another game I had problems loading through the tape port of any of the dragons was Flagon Bird by Bosco. I converted the CAS file to a WAV file and tried loading from my netbook, to no avail. So I'm going to use the XRAW emulator to demonstrate this. Released in 2014, it's a dragon version of the well-known Flappy Bird. With cute graphics and smooth scrolling, I'm sure this would have been a hit back in the 80s too. Simply controlled with the spacebar, it is as infuriatingly difficult as the original, requiring millisecond timing to adjust the bird's bounce to align with the next gate. With some practice though, high single digits can be achieved. The game sound, although good, is very sparse. I would have liked to have seen this paired with some Return of the Beast style music, but overall, a fun and well-rounded game. With the dragons looking nice and shiny again, it would be a shame to put those that came with dirty polystyrene inserts back into them. Years of being stored in attics, before being donated to the museum, have left their toll. Dirt I can deal with, but the melt scars left by the cables will stay to tell their tale. Warm soapy water is all that's needed, but they are a little too big for the kitchen sink. The bath is a much better place to clean and dry them, making them look as clean as they are likely going to get. And here are some of the culprits of the melted polystyrene. The criminal evidence is still attached. As with the power supplies in part 1, I removed the residue with white spirit, followed by a normal surface cleaner. Some of the tape deck cables have damaged strain relief collars, so these need to be repaired to prevent more damage. With the old removed, this heat shrink, with the built-in glue, is perfect for this repair. Remember, if storing cables in polystyrene packaging, make sure you bag them. Another one complete. I'm not going to show every dragon being refurbished, as this process is much the same for each, but here are some unique issues I've faced. The first is a blown capacitor, and the inside looks baked dry. With the capacitor replaced with a modern version, it checks out fine. This dragon's owner felt the need to write a dire warning on the side not to use the cartridge port without first switching off everything. Thankfully, this comes off with some IPA. But this poor dragon must have had brown paint spilt on it, and it's not a good look. IPA has no effect, and neither does white spirit. Paint stripper is the only thing to lift this paint. Although it affects the plastic a little, this dragon now looks good enough to be used as a handling machine in the museum. So there we are. More progress than I remember doing, but less than I want. Still, it's been fun to explore the world of the dragon further, and it's a more capable machine than I'd first thought. So until next time, goodbye.